All right, everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Game Changers Show. I'm your host, Mike McKay, based in the Jacksonville, Florida market. And each and every week, we do this show with people who are changing the game of real estate all over the country. We will be off next week because it's our quarterly meeting, but generally we do this every week. Anyone who is in the Jacksonville market or thinking about getting into the market, feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to help, and we are a pretty active buyer here as well. Um, so uh, this week on the show, we have a good friend of mine from Jacksonville. So, Gary, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. So, for people who don't know you, do you want to give just kind of a quick, maybe 2 minute background about your journey of how you got started in real estate and kind of where you are today?
Great question. I got into real estate as a lot of people do part time. So I was working full time in a sales job actually, and I was putting a little bit aside in the 401k and all that, and I was doing pretty well, but I wasn't really getting ahead. And anybody that's worked this high stress, demanding job, it takes a lot of your time, right? So it takes a lot of your mental energy too. So you have all this time and energy going towards something that you're just paying the bills, and you're not really getting ahead. You're not really developing anything, right? You're not owning anything, and so that's where I knew I wanted to get into investing. And read a couple books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and so forth, and a couple investing books, and just realized that real estate, because it's tangible and pretty historically predictable on appreciation, that'd be the best way to go. And I'm hands on, and I like to learn, so that just started actually flipping houses part time while I was working full time. So that's and I just started like a fire hose, man. Just learning every day, and yeah, it's tons of lessons learned, tons of experiences had, and I just know that it's not easy. It's actually pretty hard, but the alternative is a lot worse.
Yeah, for sure. Talk about, because there are a lot of newer people listening to the show, maybe people who've done a few flips, or maybe they're just thinking about getting into it. What are some of those lessons that you learned early on flipping houses?
So I would say the number one lesson to be learned is trust but verify, as a famous president once said. um, learn the process, learn construction, learn how, and you don't have to be an expert right away. Surround yourself with trustworthy people, right? Weed out the ones that are trying to take advantage of you, contractors, other wholesalers, investors. Like just find a good circle, and just be a sponge, right? So that's a huge lesson. Is don't um, I think there's a fine line between paralysis by analysis, of not taking action because you're overthinking or stuck in a class, a serial education person. But you also
Hmm.
want to be, you want to have a calculated risk, but you don't want to be risk adverse, especially when you're starting out, because you just got to take action, right? That's the first step. So I would say that, yeah, you definitely need to learn the business as much as you can, and that's kind of my personality. That's kind of why I excel, because if I'm doing something, if I'm putting time and effort into something, I'm going to be just 100% in it, right? I'm going to be learning. I'll be
Hmm.
curious, like, so just be curious about that, and just want to strive to learn. And the more you learn, the more you're going to have success, and the more that you're going to probably, if you have success in this business, you're probably going to stick around. There's a lot of people that leave this business, whether investors or they're real estate agents, that just they don't have success, and then they leave the business, right? And there's steps that they're not taking to ensure success. There's enough money and there's enough business to go around, and it's just aligning yourself with the right people and doing the right things to make that happen.
Yeah. And you talked a bit there about like, learning construction, right? Like, how did you go about that process of learning construction?
Just again, be a sponge. Having to find the right contractors to work with, that are willing to, hey, this is my vision, this is my plan, I'm doing these houses, and like creating a good relationship there to where they were consistent, and then picking their brain, be at the job site, just asking questions. The first couple of houses I hired a home inspector and followed the home inspector around, asked him all sorts of questions. Why are you looking at this and this, and what do I look out for? And just, just learn as
Mm,
much as you can in the situations that come up, right? So if you're having an inspection on your house, you know, it's your job to be there. So if you're working, you have to take some time off work. Say you got a doctor's appointment, and go, like, take the opportunities that come up to learn as much as you can, because it's just going to lessen your learning curve.
mm,
So I think that
yeah,
that's,
that's a really good
and
point.
again, it just starts with one problem, one step. So, I think another thing is to partner with the right people on stuff. So if you
Mm,
you know if you have time to prospect, right, and you can drive for dollars or door knock or whatever, you may not know how to flip a house. You may not be an agent. You need an agent to sell the house. Like, partner with somebody. A deal is valuable to investors like me and yourself, and are willing to partner with you in some aspect to
mm,
get the deal, to do the deal with you. And I've offered to many people that I will joint venture with you if you bring me the deal, and I will help you. I'll kind of walk through a lot of stuff with you. I'll go do demo with you or something. I'll show you the scope of work process. I'll show you why we do things, and cost and suppliers, and how to estimate rehab, all that, because you're providing me value with getting me a deal. And again, it has to be a real deal, not a
mm.
fake deal, as they say. It has to have enough meat on the bone, especially if you're splitting it with somebody else. So that's really that. Yeah, because you got to think about that. So, well, you can make 30 grand on a deal. It's like, well, you're splitting that. What if there's like three partners? And, like, you got to think about equity splits when you look at the gross margin, for sure. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's huge. So, I've had this conversation many times with many people about getting started, and again, it starts with the why. Why am I doing this? What do I want? What do I want to accomplish? And then if you really decide you want to do it, again, find people that can mentor you. Go to meetups, Jack's Yellowbird, that kind of thing. Meet people, and then add value. Work on adding value. Like, where can you come in and add
Hmm.
value? Do you go work part time or something and cold call for somebody? I know that Yellowbird brought a lot of people up through their program and had them work for them, right? And there's no better experience than experiential learning. So actually doing the work you're gonna learn the fastest, rather than reading a book or listening to anybody. So just learn, kind of figure out where you can add value as you learn.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And following around the home inspector, you're paying him, right? You might as well be there and ask all the questions you can, and then you kind of have
It's a
an idea of how
disservice
it
if you
works instead
don't.
of just getting the report. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. What are some things that you look at? Because there's people all over the country who listen to this show too. Maybe they don't know Jacksonville, but what are some must do's? Like, if you see in a house in Jacksonville and you're like, oh, it's got this, I've always got to do it. Because otherwise it's going to be a
Yeah.
problem when I bring it to the retail market.
Right. So almost every insurance company now, if they're even writing policies, are asking for a 4 point. So that's your electric, your HVAC, air conditioning, roof, plumbing, and electrical. So if there is things that aren't up to their specs, they will deny coverage. Right? They won't write the policy, or they'll make you fix them. So selling a flip, you got to think
Mm,
about what your buyer's going through, and having to get insurance, and having to go through the
hmm
inspection process. And so right now, I would say that. For example, I just did one with a water heater that was working, but it was like 12 years old. And insurance companies get really after 10 years, they're like, you got to replace the water heater. So very easy replacement, but it was working.
Mm,
But I went ahead and anticipated my buyer's objection. We went ahead and just did the water heater, and just knowing the stuff's going to come up just by
mm,
doing hundreds of transactions, just know what things are going to come up. And so that's another good point is to if you want to do a flip, well, put yourself in your buyer's shoes. What are they going to go through? So right now we're struggling with
mm-hmm,
affordability with interest rates. And Jacksonville,
mm-hmm,
I think our median income has risen recently, but it's just home prices have way outpaced, especially after the COVID boom, way outpaced wages. So these buyers that could qualify for a $300,000 house now could qualify for a $200,000 house. And
mm-hmm,
before COVID, there was a decent amount of areas you can get a $200,000 house, but you're talking about 40 to 50% appreciation during those years. And they've kind of trickled down a little bit, but we're still pretty much, maybe 5% lower in pricing. So they can't now instead of three, they're getting 7% interest rate. So you have to think about
mm-hmm,
affordability, and maybe you find a deal that's a $300,000 buy with a $600,000 ARV, and it actually checks out. You can make a good spread on paper. You may have to hold that house at 600K. You may have to hold that for 6 months. It might sit on the market for 6 months. It better be in a like a
mm,
HOA type cookie cutter neighborhood where it's high demand. But if it's any kind of funky house or any kind of rural or whatever, the house is going to sit. I mean, just think about the how that buyer has qualified for a $600,000 house. What type of buyer is that? When I now you're talking about
yeah,
like you're talking about you know double six figure like doctors, lawyers, and all that. So your buyer pool shrinks, and especially right now with the interest rates, unless you get an out of state buyer or something, you're just it's tough to be an outlier right now as far as unless you're a pretty standard house. So during the pandemic, you could buy something in an okay neighborhood that was kind of had a funky layout or needed some repairs, and you put it on the MLS, and then you'd sell for 10,000 more than you did. It's like that's not a real market. And the people that got used to that are hurting right now because that's not a fundamentally sound market. So I just
yeah,
kind of sat back. I did a little bit during the pandemic, but I wasn't. I just kind of knew that it was going to break pretty soon. So, but and I think I've talked to a couple people that have been around the Great Recession, right? And there were people who saw that coming too, uh, but most people kind of just got hit, right? It was like,
yeah,
so I really think at the Fed, and that sucks that interest rates are higher right now, but I really think that if the Fed hadn't started raising rates, that we would have crashed pretty hard. If you
yeah,
look at the Great Depression and so there was a pandemic in 1919, an influenza pandemic
mm-hmm,
worldwide, kind of similar to what we went through, except we didn't have any medicine like we do now, and so millions died. Like it was in the U.S. a big deal. But what happened after that? They had the Roaring Twenties. So if you heard of that, it's
mm-hmm,
the boom time in America. And then what preceded that boom time? The biggest economic collapse in the history of our country. So
right,
what the Fed was trying to do by tightening and raising interest rates, quantitative tightening, and raising interest rate, they're trying to prevent. They're like, holy crap, this economy is like out of control. We have to artificially stop it before it runs off the tracks. So I kind of equate the time we're in
mm-hmm,
now as like you had a really good time with your buddies the night before, and you're doing tequila shots and staying out till 4 in the morning and having great fun, and then the next day it's the hangover, right? And it's terrible. Trust me, the older you get, it's even worse. Um, so yeah, so we're in the hangover right now in real estate. Things are still getting done.
Hmm.
People still need houses. People still need houses, but there's no fire. Everybody's kind of on the sideline nursing their hangovers.
Yeah. What have what have you changed about your business to adjust for this?
So I got very hesitant. So I was really aggressive during the initial COVID because of the economic fundamentals. The Fed pumping money in, mortgage rates being really low, people still need houses. Like even if states that were under quarantine, you could still show houses. They just had to put masks on. I mean, there was ways to do transact real estate. And I looked specifically here as well. So I was trying to. A lot of the other
Hmm.
investors were just getting rid of properties. Oh my God, like this is crazy,
Hmm.
and I could not buy enough because all banks started tightening up. Hard money lenders stopped lending, and so I wish I could have bought
Hmm.
more during COVID or the initial 2020. Then what happened after that with
Hmm.
the trillions of dollars we put into the economy and cheap money out there, that we had two things happen. You had out of state into Florida, you had out of state buyers, New York, California, a lot of people coming down, moving, right, creating that retail
Hmm.
demand. And then you had on the other end, um, institutional buyers, iBuyers, hedge funds that they just had a crap ton of low money, and we're just gonna sap up real estate and overpay for it. So the market was just
Hmm.
it was out of whack, right? And so what's happened since? Well, the hedge funds stopped buying. Okay, well, or if they buy, and they're buying very conservatively.
Hmm.
So that whole component is gone from the market, and
Hmm.
the migration from COVID is gone. So, and you've got these people that bought, that are in 3% mortgages, and they're not going to sell. They're not going to sell to move in unless they really have to, right? They just, like, I sold one of my flips. It was like 3,000 square feet, um, and they upgraded from another house, on buying, but this opportunity came up, and we took it. So that was,
Hmm.
there's people that are still doing it. So yeah, we're trying to level off right now, and so I so to your question, I stopped. I didn't play. Like I was on the sideline. I wasn't going to overpay for houses. I wasn't going to buy houses where I shouldn't buy houses, or I want to flip in a bad zip code or a bad neighborhood,
Hmm.
because, and yeah, I left some money on the table. I know that I did, but it wasn't like a substantial amount, because I still had a lot going on, because I was buying up until mid 2021 until it got just insane. People buying
Hmm.
houses 10K over sight unseen, from wholesalers. This, just didn't make sense. So, but I personally know a lot of people have lost money. A lot of people are in pain, and
Yeah.
it's not really. I've just heard stories, and I'm not sure if you have too, but there's a lot of people taking 20, 30, 40, $50,000 losses
Yeah.
for hard money that can't sell, can't refi.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
You know, I so
Yeah.
I feel like I know that I left some money by knowing that, not buying into the craziness, but I also didn't lose. Like, I didn't lose money on anything. So, now I'm just kind of focusing on quality over quantity, and try to stick below at least 300, if
Hmm.
not 250 sales price and below. I mean, we're talking about flip neighborhoods, right? Like
Yeah.
Arlington, West Side, stuff like that. The problem is when you're trying to sell a $400,000 house in Arlington, like the people that are willing to live in Arlington, are, if they're going to go, if they have 400K, they want to go towards Kernan or Hodges or whatever in that area, right? So if they're going to pay that much, I mean, it's literally like double the cost of what it would be, before,
Yeah.
with lower interest rates. So. prices went up, interest rates went up, and
Yeah.
it's just kind of how.
So are you just avoiding anything in general over like a $300,000 ARV at this point?
Sorry, I got a delay there.
Are you just avoiding anything in general over a $300,000 ARV?
It's got to be like, okay, Isle of Palms or something, like a very specific Kensington, just, Jack's Golf and Country Club. Like, just if people are going to pay that, it's going to be an established neighborhood. It's going to be nothing. Like I'm seeing like buyers like one thing wrong with a house that's not like cookie cutter or perfect, and they're just like not like lots of maybes. So you just got to think when you do something
Yeah.
that expensive, all your costs act right. So
Hmm.
your hard money is gonna you're gonna be 3, 4, or 5 thousand a month in holding costs. So you better have a high mark, and
Hmm.
that's what I'm saying. That even if you start with a high spread, you may not close with a high spread. And then what are you doing?
Hmm.
You're probably doing uh, price drops, right? So then you're paying more in holding costs and you're lowering the price. So it's got to be the right deal. I know for a fact that 250 and below um, is going to sell a lot quicker. You're going to have a lot of those FHA, VA buyers that can afford that, and there's like down payment assisted programs that can help them out. So that
Hmm.
that's where I would say that the houses that you want to buy are at least for a flip, right? So there's people that are doing stuff with Airbnbs and pad splits and stuff, and that's just I like to buy something with flip numbers because I can always do whatever I want with it, and I know that I'm going to be okay.
Hmm.
But if I overpay for something, that let's just say I buy something for an Airbnb and it doesn't work out, then then it's like, well, now I can't sell it because I put too much into it or overpaid for it because I thought I based it on these numbers. And Airbnb right now is super saturated, and we had a boom of people that were coming down to Florida, and where were they staying? Airbnbs, right? So
Yeah.
Airbnbs, it became the hot thing. Now pad split's the hot thing, right? So it's not to say you can't cash flow and make money, but I wouldn't, I if you buy it for a pad split numbers and it doesn't work for anything else, if that goes up, right? If it stops cash flowing, then what do? You got to
Yeah.
sell it
You're
at a
stuck.
break even or a loss, or you got to run it out in negative cash flow, right? You're stuck because you bought it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I just think that
And I go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that that's something that I think the last couple of years you could make mistakes like that and still be okay because you had 20% appreciation a year. The market would save you on everything, but now it just if you make a mistake, you're gonna break even or lose money. If you make a mistake,
Yeah.
if you buy a house wrong, it's gonna be a
Yeah.
very small deal for you. So I don't know about you, Mike, but when I flip a house, I don't like to make 5K or something or 10K, right? That's not I can't do enough of
No.
those to make enough money. So right, but
No.
it's
No.
very yeah. So the market's not going to save you now. It's the market
Yeah, that's
is
right.
it's very tough right now. So um, I think
What
we got a delay. Did you ask a question?
yeah, I know, yeah, sorry, there's a little bit of a delay. But there's like, everyone's got like a different process with flipping houses. There's so many different ways to handle construction. So let's say you get a house and you bought it, right? You're like, I'm gonna flip it. Like, what's your process there? Like, how are you starting from day one? I've closed on the house to, getting it done and getting it across the finish line.
I mean, I think that's something as a flipper you develop over time, especially with the crews you have. Every construction
Hmm.
project or every rehab has a pretty similar, if you know construction, has a pretty similar process, scope of work.
Hmm.
You're obviously like you would start with demo and then you would go into rough, right? So, that's your wiring, that's your plumbing, that's like the guts, like, any framing that you're going to do, close, add a room or close something off, that would be there. So that's, that's going to be where you want to make the right decisions, because once you put drywall up and make everything pretty, then if you screw up, then it's going to be, oh, we got to rip that out. Like it just gets harder, right? It's because you want to make those decisions right. Floor plans and stuff like that. You want to make that as tight as you can, and that's just that's
Hmm.
just trial and error. That's again, being interested, like knowing what ends are hot, what an open layout is, how like kitchens, how to design a kitchen. And you really just got to put yourself in your buyer's shoes, and or if you lived in the house, you walk in, oh, this flows, right? This house feels, because an awkward floor plan will kill a deal. And there's a lot of houses here in
Hmm.
Jacksonville that have been added on over time, right? Converted garages or porches, and so step downs, step ups. So you got to minimize those things and try within reason to make the floor plan as attractive as possible. So that really happens during that first phase. And again, when you first start
Hmm.
out, just you have the right people around you that can help you with that. But you'll learn what works and what doesn't, and um, it's just after doing, hundreds of these houses, I can pretty much go in and just kind of do the layout within 5 or 10 minutes. But it took a lot of time and effort to get to that point. I didn't even know how to measure cabinets when I first started. Now I can just go to a
Hmm.
kitchen and just tell you exactly what, hey, we need a filler there, Lazy Susan, blind corner here, and I know the measurements, sink base. Like I know I can do it because I've done it so much, but I didn't even know I needed help when I first started. So, yeah, I would say that there's some class. I know Jax Ria has like an intro to construction class. I would just learn kind of the general construction, like how the timeline should go. Because honestly, like if you hire a contractor and you trust him and he's not doing it the right way or whatever, or he screws up, like you need to be able to follow the process and follow the steps, to learn and to hold your contractor accountable.
Hmm.
So I would just that's an important process to learn is the scope of work process and just kind of how a house goes together. And it's pretty logical, right? So you're gonna do your stuff inside the walls and crawl space. You're gonna do that before you put drywall up, right? So you got to follow the process, right? Because if you happen to break sheetrock after the fact, like it's just time and money. So I mean, it's pretty straightforward. For that process, and it's just learning it and being involved with it. So, but yeah, I think you just got to find the right workers and contractors around you, and put enough guidelines and guardrails up, and just and let them work and develop that relationship as far
Yeah.
as them taking you taking care of them.
Yeah. Is there stuff that you always do? Like I'm just curious for myself. We don't flip nearly as much as you do. If you're doing your demo and you see certain things behind the walls, is there certain stuff you always do, like, repiping the house or rewiring it, or what's your any tips there for people?
Yeah, I mean, I've kept galvanized plumbing like the water pipes before, but we just go ahead and repipe it now because it's a turn off to the buyers. Even though if it might be working, galvanized plumbing is fine. I mean, it's insurable, but it's just it gets water pressure issues because you get corrosion in there. So we go ahead and just do that now.
Mm.
But cast iron plumbing, that's very time and labor intensive, especially if it's a slab property to replace. So I wouldn't do that. I'd just make sure they're, maybe snake the drains and make sure they're flowing. Um, but yeah,
Mm.
I think you want to know enough when you do your scope of work initially and you walk the house. You get to a point where you're going to have to do this. Like you just peek your head in the crawl space. If you got a crawl space, peek your head in the crawl space, and you say, "Oh, I see
Yeah.
galvanized plumbing running on. Okay, I know I'm going to have to do a repipe." Right? So but that comes with time and doing stuff and knowing these objections and these things you have to overcome on the retail end. So every buyer is going to get a home inspection. If it's got septic, they're probably going to get a septic inspection, a well inspection. Like this stuff's you. Just because you don't do it during the rehab doesn't mean it's not going to come up on the retail sale. So the
Yeah.
stuff can be working and fun, right? But to turn off to a buyer, and the buyer can walk away so fast on after an inspection. Hey, it's got galvanized plumbing. I don't even, like, well, all right, well, with the right offer, I'll replace, just go ahead and do it, right? Make that house as appealing as you can within reason. Don't over rehab, but rehab the important things that the buyer is going to care about.
Yeah. Yeah, and you probably see a lot of that because you're on the agent side too. You kind of see what gets pushed back on the inspection versus things that maybe aren't as important to buyers today.
And that was probably the other things I did too. Again, I was working full time when I did this, but I got my real estate license, and I began to sell my own flips. So I
Mm.
control the entire process. And yeah, I mean, I have these conversations with agents, with buyers, and you just learn through those interactions what people are looking for, what's important, and again, solicit feedback. When you get a showing, a lot of agents will give you feedback on, well, the buyer's not interested because of this, right? So, well, crap, the maybe I should have done that during the rehab process. Now it's already on the market. I'd have to do, so you just kind of learn what you need to do through that feedback. But I mean, I would encourage a lot of
Yeah.
investors to get the real estate license. Well, if they are selling their properties, because it's just going to help you be a better investor. There are people that can't because of the time constraints, and that's fine. Just find a great agent that, well, first off, is investor friendly and will kind of understand what it's like to be in your shoes. That was my biggest challenge, is that the people that I hired to sell my flips are just kind of casual about it and didn't really know investing, or didn't know, weren't just didn't have the level of blood, sweat, and tears I had into the house to get it to that point. And
Hmm.
so that was I had to be a better experience, and so I went ahead and got my license and started to sell my own flips. And again, that just started to, like, again, you just keep surrounding yourself with experience and resources, and then you're just going to get better every day, or try to get better every day. And that's one of the things you can do to get direct feedback, is actually list
Hmm.
list your list your flips. So I joined the brokerage I'm with it now, which is One Realty Corp, and as a flipper and selling my flips, and recently took it over as the broker. So and I've went full time since I quit my job in 2019. So,
Hmm.
but we have a lot of investors like myself in the brokerage that sell their own stuff, and I think that uh, at the bare minimum, even if you do even if you do 3 deals a year and you're selling them, you're probably going to save like 10 grand at least in commission. And your costs are being an agent. Your dues are probably add up to about like 1,100 bucks for the year.
Mm.
So, and I've got friends and family. Like, I've made, like, what I'm saying? Like, there's always somebody within your network that needs real estate. So, if you're doing flips, you're going to save money on that, and then you always have an opportunity to to sell to somebody. Like, it's crazy. Like, They just come up 2 or 3 times a year. It'd be a friend or it'd be a family member or uncle or whatever that'll need something bought or sold. So um, there's always a chance. There's always opportunity to make money with that license outside of just what you're doing.
Yeah. And you guys have kind of a different model at the brokerage than a lot of brokerages do. So do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So when I was again coming from being a flipper, when I was looking for a brokerage, now when you get your real estate license, um, every agent needs to be underneath a broker. So when you get your license, it's actually not active until you're underneath or with a broker. So the first thing an agent needs to do is they need to interview brokers and find out where they need to, they say, call it hanging your license. So for me, I said, well, I'm just primarily selling my flips. I'm working full time, selling my flips. I really don't want to give the broker, I don't need my handheld. I don't want to give them extra commission. So I knew from the beginning I was looking for 100% commission brokerage. So what that means is that
Hmm.
a lot of brokers will take a percentage of your commission on every transaction. So let's say they have me at 70/30 and I make, 5 grand. Well, 30% of that is going to the broker and I keep the rest.
Hmm.
And then there's brokers have caps where, okay, now you've paid me 10 grand. Now you can start keeping more of your money. So traditionally brokerages have been, they've been higher cost models, right? So they had a lot of floor time. They had people that were working the desks and the phones, and so um, the brokers maybe provided more leads, but it was typically like a higher 60/40 type of split. But now there's so much technology and there's so much stuff you can do on your own that a lot of people start moving to the 100% commission model. So
Hmm.
there's two things with us is that we are a true 100% commission model, which means that some other brokerages have a cap. Some other brokerages have some other fees included and say, well, you're 100% after you hit your cap, or there's an extra fee on top. We just charge one transaction fee per file. So we're one of the most inexpensive brokerages. And, for me, it's like, well, that's what I was looking for, and that's what I think is fair. They're doing all the work, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
so, but I also have I mean, I'm a flipper. I have other businesses going on. I don't need to make a bunch of money on my agents. And so I
Hmm.
still think I can provide a tremendous amount of value for that low transaction fee. So, I think that if you get your license, you need to decide, well, what environment do I want to be in? And we may not be the right fit for everybody. You may want to have a bigger national type brokerage, and you may feel more comfortable with that, and that's fine. And whether or not it's the right fit for you in the long run, go experience that. But we're not going to be that. We're a local, smaller, family atmosphere type brokerage that we are trying to grow aggressively, but we're going to have everything that they do on a smaller scale and not fancy marketing and national branding. And I think a lot of people are scared when they get in. They say, I need to make money. How do I do this? And so they gravitate towards the bells and whistles and all this training and stuff. It's like it's a sales job. Like they have to understand it's a sales job, and the stuff you learned in real estate school isn't going to make you money in real estate. So you're a
Hmm.
salesperson. You're a 1099 employee broker. Like, yes, you're my agent, but you are like you're not. I am not responsible for paying you, or like you need to go out and hustle. I'm there to make sure
Hmm.
that we have an office, signage, we have some advertising, and some oversight on documentation for the DVPR. But I can't make you do deals, and so you see people that always kind of chase the grass is greener type perspective of switching brokerages to think that something is going to be better over here or there. And I mean, it really starts with that. If you want to make retail
Mhm.
real estate, let's just say retail real estate, hey, like be the best freaking agent out there. Like, what are the other agents doing? What does their marketing and branding look like? What are they doing for referrals, for building their network up? Like, are they hustling enough? Because if you're starting out and you don't have a name, you're not going to have any referrals come in. You just got to start getting business, and it's not easy, but like, you know, that's what you want to do. You just got to want it enough to nothing's going to be handed to you. So if a brokerage says that they have all this stuff, uh, that's the recruiting pitch that they are going to. I want to uh, under promise and over deliver to people that join us,
Mhm.
because again, I can get out of the way and provide you what I can, but at the end of the day, you have to go make it happen. So, and that's
Yeah.
just the nature of the business, and
What about
there's
people?
a lot
What
of
about
agents,
people?
and what was that?
What about people who are looking for? What about people who are looking for an investor-friendly real estate agent? Like you said, you had some trouble finding that person in the
Well, that
beginning, but if someone didn't want to get their license, how would they go about finding the right person there?
Well, what I did is I posted on Bigger Pockets, and that was like where I was trying
Mm.
to find people. Started going to the investment meetups and stuff, and trying to find agents. Found an agent. She was great, and then she moved, and so she referred us to somebody in her office who was you know, and I said this nicely. I don't know. She was terrible, but um, fired her in the middle of the action. Like, it's just bad. So at that point, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to get my license kind of thing. I don't want to deal with this anymore. So I would say, so for personal reasons, I would say that, we have a ton of experienced investor agents in my brokerage that are investors or are specialized in working with investors that would be a good fit, right? So you can even contact me, and I can try to either help you out or partner you up with one of our agents. So we are investor focused, but we also are full service. So we also do the yeah. I want my agents ideally to be well rounded and to use their license to make money whenever they can. So it's a disservice to yourself to
Mhm.
turn down any opportunity to make money with your license, because it's really once you get down to it, it's not. I wouldn't say it's not. It's easier to make money, like compared to doing a flip and just going and buying it and taking the money and doing. I mean, to just put a listing on the market is a lot easier than it is to do a flip. So if there's an opportunity for me
Mhm.
to do a listing, and again, I'm going to provide the same level of service I do on selling a flip. Like, I'm just, I'm take extreme ownership of it. But it's a lot less work than doing a flip, right? So,
Yeah.
but you sell your flips, you learn negotiation, you learn, how to put contracts together, you learn what pitfalls to avoid, like on the deals, getting not having deals fall apart, that kind of thing. So if you learn that, I mean, literally, like I said, you can do nothing and have two listings come a year. I mean, so if you make 10K, it's $20,000 a year, just from being in the game and being relevant. So
Mhm.
let's just say you're working part time, right, or working full time, and you have a license. I mean, that's one of my agents is a full time nurse, and she just closed one of her first deals, a listing actually. And
Mhm.
so that's just like extra money for her. And I've been in the position where I've had a full time job and had flips closing, and it was like, okay, like it was like bonus money, man. It was like, all right, because you got your bills paid from your job, and you're you're pretty set up, but then you just got this extra 10K come in, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. Like, let me pay off all my debt, or let me invest it, or So it's a great position to have. So I would say that of the brokerage you join as far as what they're gonna require from you and what they're gonna take out of your check, because they can take as much as forty
Hmm.
percent of your commission. So now, if you want to be on like a big real estate team, or you want that environment where they are taking 40% of your commission, so they're way more involved with you. If you want that, it's going to make you feel comfortable. Then, like I said, like it's not the right fit for everybody over here. But I was always in a mindset of it's my money and I want to keep as much as I can. Uh, so
Hmm.
even if it's a listing for somebody, like why am I sharing? Like, what are you giving me for that 30%? And they're really not giving you that much more. So, and if they give you a lead, let's say they give you a lead, oh, well, they'll give me leads. Well, they're taking money out of that lead, and then they're taking your commission split as a brokerage. So you're,
Hmm.
so yeah, you're getting money, but it's like it's cut up a bunch of different ways. So I've always been the self starter, so I'm like, let me just make it happen myself. But so that's kind of the way I lead the brokerage. But it really, I don't want somebody to join my brokerage and feel frustrated and not making money and then leave. That doesn't do anybody service, right? I'd rather have be upfront and just help when
Hmm.
I can, give the right resources and direction to them to make money. But I don't, not everybody's going to be the right fit for us. And maybe they go for a year at
Hmm.
another big box brokerage and come back and say, you know what, I want to start saving some money and that kind of thing. So, I would just say that start with your license, get your license, and then figure out, what environment's going to be best for you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Um, and then there's always this debate as well, too, between like flipping houses, buying rentals, and I think you've mostly gone towards the flipping side. I don't know if you have any rentals. You want to talk a little bit about
I do have
why you
one.
made that choice?
So for me, when I first started, it was all about capital. It's just let me make as much money as I can so I can invest even more.
Hmm.
So I think as I've gotten older and want to start building some residual income businesses, that I'm gonna shift more towards that. I'm actually building a turnkey renovation and property management business with a partner as well to focus on doing some of that within a business, right, with partners. So then the rentals I pick up, that property management company will manage that. So
Hmm.
that is the shift. Right now, it's just not a great time. I mean, okay, so I would say just got to find the right deal again. Like, just don't
Hmm.
overpay for a rental just because you could pay more for it, but pay cash because your cap's going to be all screwed up when you do, because these refi rates, the bird method is it's just rates got to come down like they were. That's why people were buying rentals the last couple of years because they could cash flow out of them because rents were going up and interest rates were staying low. So I mean, I probably should have picked up a
Hmm.
couple of last couple of years, but I was just focused on doing all the flips. I was probably at my peak. I was doing 7 or 8 projects at a time, so about 20, 25 houses a year. So
Hmm.
I'm going to do maybe 6 this year, and that's fun. Just higher margin, better deals. So grow the brokerage and grow the other
Hmm.
businesses. So I would say that it really depends on what your goals are and what you want to accomplish. And again, for me, I wanted to just be hands on and just like soak everything up and do as much as I could fast. And
Hmm.
so, that was flipping how I started. But yeah, as I shift into getting older and stuff, I would say I'm going to pick up some more rentals and build up the property. And again, I became a broker now. I can have my company manage my own rentals, right? So there's synergies that work that are at play too.
Hmm.
So I think it's not. I think they're both good, and it just depends on where you're at in life, what your goals are. A rentals are always they're
Hmm.
not going anywhere, right? They're the bit bread and butter. So I'm not going to do any Airbnb or pad splits. I'm going to do flips and I'll do some
Hmm.
buy and holds too. Just because at this point in my life I want to build up some residual income. But it's all going to start
Hmm.
from the acquisition, your forte, right? So I get this deal,
Hmm.
and what is it? Maybe it's a zip code that's more of a rental zip code. Well, cool. Instead of wholesaling to somebody, maybe I'll keep it myself. But I run the numbers
Hmm.
based on what I get it for. Hopefully, get a good deal on it, and it would be a good cash flow number, even with higher interest rates. So let's just say, Mike, that I have to
Hmm.
go. I don't know. What are you getting, 8% now on BRRRR or whatever on long term
7.5,
DSCR?
8.
8%.
Yeah.
So let's just say you take it down with 8, and you still the deal's good enough that you cash flow out of it. Well, guess what? Now I'm factoring in maybe I could refi in 3 years at 5. Okay, then what does my cash flow look like, right? So that's the goal, is to
Hmm.
incrementally increase rent while you wait to refi as of right now because of the way the rates are.
Hmm.
So again, if you try to burr and you don't have a good deal, I think they're at 70% LTV or something. I know they're just keep lowering. It's like, wait a minute. So they're higher interest rates and financing less. That's the market we're in. So yeah. So
Yeah.
again, it all comes back to the equity in the deal, and yeah, cool. Like I don't want to leave any cash in the deal. I just cash is king for me right now as far as growing and scaling. Maybe somebody in their 60s or late 50s are like has cash and would put stuff into those assets. Maybe they want to buy them to depreciate for their tax bases. So they're different goals for different people. And they're all,
Sure.
it's like, what kind of car do you like? Do you like Lexus or BMW? It's like, well, you get your preference, right? They're both luxury
Yeah.
cars. They're both getting you there in style. So and that's just personal. So I have said this before. I'm less bullish on Airbnb / pad split models just because I think they're technology
Hmm.
driven, and you know they kind of fuzzy the numbers or skew the numbers of the property based on
Hmm.
a inflated cash flow. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I just for a portfolio, I'd rather hold long a buy and hold than a pad split, because that pad split
Hmm.
may have to turn into a long term, one day,
Hmm.
right? Maybe something happens. I mean, there's laws they could pass. They go bankrupt. I mean, there's so many things that can happen. Your bread and butter has always been is the buy and hold.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, we're kind of getting close to the end here. And there's always two questions that I like to ask at the end of the show. And the first one I'm sure you have an answer to, which is, what is the craziest or most uncomfortable situation you've ever experienced in a real estate deal?
Whew. Uh, Man, there's so many. I had an answer, and I was like, I could think of something better, and I just haven't thought about it since. I would say you just, well, I've fallen through several subfloors that were rotted into crawl spaces, so
Oh.
that's always been fun. Um, finding dead dogs and stuff in crawl spaces, like yeah, just all sorts of stuff. What Haven't found any bodies yet, human bodies, thankfully. But I mean, it's no these houses, man. I mean, it's tough to imagine living in the house some of these people live that you buy, right? I'm not the cleanest person ever, but it's like I feel a lot better about myself after I come from that. Yeah, your legs are covered with fleas. You're like, oh shit. So there's always like, um, yeah, it's. I mean, it's just like I found I've had raccoons and dead rats and raccoons in. We've ripped off a roof and had a raccoon living in the roof. Um, Big old.
Oh.
Actually, it wasn't a raccoon. It was a possum, big ass possum. Um, yeah. So then you have like squatters, people breaking in. I've had AC stolen. I've had appliances stolen. I've had homeless people set up uh, a bed for extracurricular activities in a garage. with the mirror there and stuff, and just all sorts of stuff, man. So it, it doesn't. There's you see all sorts of stuff, man.
Yeah.
This is the craziest story. So I did think of
Okay.
something. So I was flipping a house in Murray Hill. Had an alarm in the house, thankfully. Door gets kicked in, alarm goes off, guy runs. So I drive over there and scared him away. But this was a week before closing, by the way. So they had
Mm.
busted the glass of the door, and then but he was gone. Didn't steal anything, thank God. So I'm like calling the contractor, hey, we need to swap out this door before closing and all this. And the lady across the street had a couple aggressive dogs with her, and basically they were usually behind the fence, but I was in the front yard, and the dogs were in the car with her, and they got out, and this German Shepherd just sprints towards me, and full speed, man. It's like this is like 10 o'clock at night, and dude grabs my leg and starts biting my leg, and I'm like kicking it, shaking my leg, yelling at the lady to get her dog, and I had a big ass bite on my leg, and
Oh,
so like I was like, let me just get this house closed. I'm not gonna freaking call anymore. I don't want to make it an issue with the neighbor. Like we're so close. But yeah, so my house got broken into in the same night as I got bit by a German Shepherd. So this stuff happens, flooding in the house. I mean, it's always something. So again,
yeah.
if you can develop a thick skin and get through the moments and roll with them and improve when you can, and just you know, um, you're gonna last. But the people that can't do that are they're some it's just not for everybody. And so I think flipping
Yeah.
houses with HGTV shows and in the hot market is kind of made attractive to people. So I know wholesalers, not to say that most wholesalers couldn't do it, but a lot of wholesalers do really well, and then they start getting to flipping houses, and then they start like losing, right? It's like,
Hmm.
well, it's a lot harder than it looks.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not so easy. Yeah.
I mean, and I've heard countless stories, right? It's easy to flip paper, but try flipping a house. Um, so you got to have risk tolerance, and you just got to be a little crazy because of the shit that
Hmm.
you deal with.
Yeah. For sure. And then the second question I have is, if you could go back in time, give yourself one piece of advice back when you were looking for that first deal, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
Take more risks,
Okay.
you know, take more action.
Hmm.
I mean,
Cool.
look, the market's only gotten better, right? There was more opportunities when I first started than there is now. I
That's
said,
right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah, I mean, especially if you're young, take risks, go for it. You know what I mean? Don't
Yeah.
talk yourself out of a deal.
Just on it. Yeah. Take risk on a decent deal though.
Honestly, if you're starting out, even if it's like an okay deal, get the experience, take the deal. Honestly,
Yeah.
stop worrying about that. Like
Yeah.
you worry about margin, you've done a ton of deals. Just do one
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. Get going. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for being on the show. This was great. I know you had something that you wanted to announce, and also if people want to reach out to you after the show, maybe they want to JV with you on a deal or send you a deal or know about the brokerage. You can make that announcement, and also how would they go about getting in touch with you?
Perfect. Yeah. So we are moving the brokerage to a new office. We purchased an office. It's a residential commercial office located right on the corner of Graywood and University, which is by San Jose and University. So we are actually having an open house, new office celebration, and early Fourth of July party next Saturday. I have an open house from 3 to 5, and then 5 to 8 we'll have music and food. So just kind of open throughout the day. Just want to just kind of celebrate the office and have some fun. And if you have real estate questions, if you're thinking about getting your license, you want to want to do some investment, you are an agent, you're looking at other brokerages, just come on by and we'll be there from 3 to 8. So I think we have a flyer that I made that we can share, and then I think we have you have my information, right? Just I would say text is the best. Text is the best way to get a hold of me, or email.
Yeah. And what, just for the people who are listening on audio only later, what's the phone number and email if you want to share it?
Oh, gotcha. So, email is Gary at onerealtycorp.com. And the phone number is 904-703-6643.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for being on the show. This was great.
Good. I hope there's some value add for everybody and yourself. And I think the takeaway here is just be careful in this market, but take action and get involved.